experienced loneliness in this last year? I've seen such an increase in this emotion being described, especially because of COVID restrictions this last year. You know, people can't travel to see loved ones. People cannot hang out with family and friends as much as they're used to. You know, I have grandparents that can't visit their new grandbabies in the hospital because of, visitation requirements. So I've seen definitely an increase in the feeling of loneliness. But interestingly enough, COVID restrictions or not, I also have people in therapy talk about feeling lonely despite being surrounded by people. A feeling of being unwelcomed or, trying to form community and not feeling like they fit in. And people tend to then isolate at home because they don't feel like they have any other choice. So loneliness, it doesn't have to be just me being a hermit at home. It can also be an emotion that's felt being surrounded by plenty of other people. Well, what do we do about it, right? What do we do with the feeling of loneliness? That's what we're going to get into. I'm Laura Nicola. I'm your faithful therapist. Thanks for joining me. So let's define loneliness first, okay? What is loneliness? It's an emotion. So loneliness as an emotion can lead to a lot of different things. It can lead to feeling depressed. It can lead a person to feeling anxious. It can lead to self-pity. It can lead to having insecurities or low self-confidence. It can lead to a feeling of emptiness. It can lead to a feeling of fear. It can lead to a lot of different things as consequential to the feeling of loneliness. Now, since loneliness is an emotion, we handle it like we do any other emotion. So in counseling, we talk about how it's really important to feel our feelings. That's something that's, kind of stereotyped, but it's true. We feel our feelings because we believe as Catholics, according to the Catechism, that emotions are morally neutral. So that means there's neither a good part about a feeling or a bad part. It's just neutral. So what that tells me is that it's been given by God to us, and it's supposed to be felt. So this is, where we can really practice some good mindfulness, mindfulness of our emotions. So if I find myself feeling lonely, if I am mindful of it, I can kind of pay attention to the inner stirrings of my heart to decide why that is. I have a whole nother YouTube video on mindfulness, so be sure to check that out if you want to know more about that. But our human instinct is to avoid loneliness. Nobody wants to feel lonely. So what do? We try to fill the void of that feeling with lots of different things. Most of the time they're unhealthy. Things like drugs or alcohol or sex or toxic friendships or, adrenaline rushing activities, pleasures of the flesh. We tend to avoid it, and this usually kind of makes it harder to cope with in the long run. So if we're not going to try to avoid it, well, what do we do with it? So I suggest that we embrace the feeling of loneliness, but take it and kind of change our perspective a little bit on it and try to see it more as solitude, a time of solitude, a time of aloneness. I'm alone, but I'm trying to work through feeling lonely. Father George Maloney is a Jesuit priest, and he has a great quote. He says, quote, "True silence is not the absence of speech, but it is the continual listening to God. The mere absence of noise in the life of a prophet is not silence." End quote. So this kind of begs this thought, of in loneliness, I have nobody. I'm by myself. But in solitude, I have Christ. Because we believe that God is everywhere. And so if he's everywhere, he's also in our hearts. So, as I think, oh, I'm feeling lonely, I'm all by myself, that's never actually the case, because God is always with us. So we kind of reframe that, right? We reframe that to have just like slightly different perspective. And then we think about how in solitude with Christ, now what? Okay, that's where, we listen, like Father George said. That's where we can ask for some guidance from Christ, right? Lord, I'm feeling so lonely. Guide me. Tell me what to do. How do I get out from under myself? How can I form community? What path are you leading me on? Are you wanting me to be lonely right now so I can be in solitude with you and increase my faith life? We can use those kind of opportunities when in a feeling of loneliness, which we can change to see as, no, I'm in solitude with God. I hope that's helpful, that kind of little change in perspective. I like this other quote. It's actually from Albert Einstein. He said that, quote, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." So let's use our creativity when we're in that loneliness. If we choose to be in solitude, it first of all feels more like a choice, which we always feel better when things are in our control. But we also use it as an opportunity to, again, go deeper in our faith life with God. So I'm not saying, that we want to feel lonely all the time. Of course not. Again, our human instinct is to avoid that, because we're formed, we're created to live with each other, to live in community. So we don't want to neglect the reason and purpose why we were created. But again, we can see the loneliness as an opportunity to go deeper. Try it out. Let me know if it's helpful. Let me know what you think about this concept. I love the comments, so be sure to leave them below. Please subscribe if you haven't, and follow me on my other platforms of Facebook and Instagram. I'm both those places. So look those up, subscribe here, and good luck with the feeling of loneliness. And as always, many blessings.